There are moments in life that stick with you forever, not because they're happy, not because they're monumental, but because they cut so deep, they leave a scar you can still feel decades later. For me, that scar came in the form of a letter. It was the night before my wedding, and I should have been celebrating. I should have been laughing with friends, preparing my vows, and letting excitement fill every part of me. Instead, I sat in a quiet corner of the church rehearsal hall, holding an envelope in my hand that dripped with venom. Inside was the cruelest collection of words I'd ever read. Words written by someone who was supposed to be a friend. Someone who had stood beside my bride-to-be and smiled like she meant it. Those words told me I would never succeed, that I would never own a home, that I would never raise a family worth being proud of, that our marriage would collapse, that my life would amount to nothing. That letter was supposed to break me, and for a while it did. But 24 years later, when I saw her again, standing on my doorstep, thin and broken, I realized something. The best revenge isn't anger. The best revenge isn't confrontation. The best revenge is living a life so full, so rich, so undeniably successful, that the words meant to destroy you turn to ash in the mouth of the person who spoke them. This is my story. I was 20 years old, too young by most people's standards, but I didn't care. When you know, you know. That's what I believed. I proposed in the simplest way. Nothing flashy, nothing staged. Just the two of us, sitting in the car after a long drive, hands intertwined on the console. I slipped the ring onto her finger while she was mid-laugh. And when she realized what was happening, the laughter turned into tears. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, "Yes." We were engaged. Our families were surprised, sure, but supportive. We were young, but we weren't reckless. We had plans, we had goals, and more than anything, we had love. And love, back then, felt like enough. Within weeks, we picked our wedding date. Halloween. People raised their eyebrows, but we wanted something different, something unforgettable. A year in advance, every friend and relative knew the date. Her bridesmaids were chosen quickly. Her sister, her cousin, and 3 of her closest friends. Dresses were picked, deposits paid. Every weekend, the women huddled over fabric swatches and flower samples, while I nodded along, happy just to see her smile. It wasn't my style to fuss over details. My job was simple: support her, love her, and show up. And I did. 3 months before the wedding, one of her bridesmaids, the loud one, the confident one, the one who seemed to thrive on being the center of attention, invited us out for a day on her boat. Her and her husband, me and my fiancé. 4 young adults, just looking for a day of sunshine and water before life became about mortgages and marriage vows. The boat was old but sturdy. They even had a jet ski attached, which she insisted on riding alone. I remember watching her skim across the lake, her laughter echoing over the water, while her husband shook his head. "Did you put the bumper between the boat and the jet ski?" he called when she docked. "It's fine," she shouted back, dismissing him with a wave. He frowned but let it go. I didn't think much of it at the time. We anchored for lunch, pulling sandwiches and drinks from coolers, laughing under the warm August sun. It felt easy, natural, the kind of day you store in the back of your memory for when life gets hard. But ease has a way of shattering when you least expect it. After lunch, we swam. Nothing unusual. But when we climbed back onto the boat, something was wrong. The boat was sinking. slowly but undeniably. Water pooled at our feet, the hull groaning with each wave. Panic rippled through us. Her husband bolted to fetch the trailer. My fiancé and the bridesmaid went with the ranger to get our car. And me. I was left alone. Me, a man who couldn't swim, standing in blistering heat with nothing but a 1-gallon bucket, told to bail water out of a dying boat. I scooped until my arms screamed. Sweat poured down my back. The boat groaned, the ramp was slick, and the water seemed endless. For an hour I fought a losing battle. When they finally returned, I collapsed in exhaustion. No amount of scooping could have saved that boat. But instead of gratitude, instead of understanding, all I got was silence, as if I hadn't done enough. We even treated them to dinner afterward, trying to smooth things over. But inside, something cracked. It was the first time I realized some people will always find a way to make their mistakes your fault. A week before the wedding, the same bridesmaid dropped out. Her excuse? It's not fair you put your wedding on Halloween. That's the biggest party night of the year. I've already spent $300 on costumes. A year. She'd known for a year. She'd promised to stand by my bride's side, and now because of a party, she walked away. It hurt my fiancé. I saw it in her eyes, the way she bit her lip and tried to smile through it. I told her it didn't matter, that we didn't need anyone who didn't want to be there. But the real betrayal hadn't come yet. The night before the wedding, at rehearsal, my mother pulled me aside. Her expression was grave as she handed me an envelope. "Read this," she said. Inside was a letter. It said we would never own a house, never build a career, never raise kids worth being proud of, that our marriage would crumble, that we would fail at life, that we were losers who didn't deserve the happiness we were chasing. Every line was venom. Every word was meant to poison. And stapled to the back, a bill for the damage to her boat. Damage caused by her ignoring her own husband's warning. Damage she somehow decided was my fault, because I hadn't bailed fast enough. I went to bed that night with that letter heavy in my chest, wondering if it was a curse or a prophecy. But in time, I learned the truth. It was neither. It was a confession of her own bitterness, her own insecurity, her own failure to see that sometimes love and perseverance win in the end. The morning of my wedding should have been filled with joy, and in many ways, it was. My bride looked radiant. Her laughter carried through the air as she got ready with her sister and cousin, and my friends patted me on the back with nervous jokes about married life. But that letter, it haunted me. Every quiet moment, every pause in conversation, I could feel the words burning inside my pocket. You'll never succeed. You'll never last. You'll never be enough. I tried to push it aside. When the church doors opened and I saw her walking toward me, everything else melted away. For that moment, I believed only in us. The ceremony was beautiful, though not without tension. I caught myself scanning the pews, half expecting that bridesmaid, the one who had written the poison letter, to appear just to ruin the day. She didn't, of course. But her absence was loud. When we exchanged vows, my voice shook. Not from nerves, but from anger. Anger at her words. Anger at the attempt to curse something pure. So when I said I do, I said it like a vow not just to my wife, but against everyone who doubted us. The reception was a blur of music, dancing, and laughter. But deep down, I carried a wound. It was as if a shadow had crept into the happiest day of my life. And yet, when I lay next to my new wife that night, her hand resting on my chest, I swore to myself, I will prove that letter wrong. I will build a life so strong, so undeniable, that no one can ever say we failed. The first years of marriage weren't easy. We were young, barely out of school, with bills that seemed to multiply every month. But we worked hard. She took on 2 jobs while I studied. I hustled wherever I could. Shifts at restaurants, construction work, tutoring, anything to pay the bills. We lived in a tiny apartment, the kind where the kitchen sink doubled as the bathroom sink if you leaned far enough. But it was ours. And in that cramped space, we laughed, we argued, we dreamed. We saved relentlessly. Every spare dollar went into a jar labeled Future House. On weekends, instead of going out, we'd walk through neighborhoods, pointing at homes we liked, imagining which one might one day be ours. At night, when exhaustion weighed us down, I'd remember that letter, her cruel prediction that we'd never own a home, and it fueled me. Every hour I worked, every corner I cut, every sacrifice I made, it was a brick laid against her curse. By our 5th anniversary, we had done it. We bought our first home. It wasn't much, a modest 2-bedroom with peeling paint and a backyard that needed taming. But when we got the keys, I stood in the empty living room, tears in my eyes, whispering, "We did it." And somewhere, in the back of my mind, I imagined her face. The bridesmaid, the doubter, the writer of that hateful letter. And I smiled. According to her letter, we'd never be parents worth admiring. Our kids would grow up aimless, lost, failures like us. But she was wrong again. Our first child came after years of trying, after nights of fear that maybe she had been right. When my wife finally held that baby in her arms, her tears fell onto the blanket, and my heart nearly broke with relief. Parenthood was chaos, sleepless nights, endless diapers, toys scattered across every corner of our once clean home. But it was also joy, pure, unshakable joy. 2 more children followed, each one a miracle in their own right. Our oldest grew into a brilliant, determined young woman who graduated college 2 years early and became a teacher. Our younger 2 found their own paths, each one shining in ways we never imagined. There were struggles, of course. There always are. But when I looked at my children, I saw living proof that her words were lies. We weren't doomed. We weren't failures. We were a family, a real, thriving family. 18 years passed, 18 years of laughter, arguments, vacations, school plays, mortgages, and late-night talks on the porch. Our marriage didn't last forever. By the time our kids were teenagers, the cracks became too deep to ignore. We grew apart, slowly but steadily, until one day we realized we were more partners in parenting than in love. The divorce was painful, yes, but it wasn't bitter. We didn't hate each other. We simply let go. And yet, we never truly separated. Holidays were still shared. Birthdays were still celebrated together. My ex-wife remained one of my closest friends, and I remained hers. The letter had predicted our marriage would collapse, and technically it had. But not the way she wanted. Not in ruin. Not in hatred. We proved that even endings could be graceful. Even separation could be filled with respect. It wasn't the life I imagined on my wedding day, but it was still a good life, a life worth living. It was the holiday season. My house was full of laughter, the smell of roasted turkey, and the chaos of children and grandchildren running through the halls. Life felt complete. Maybe not perfect, but complete. I was in the living room when my brothers came in from outside. They looked almost confused. "Hey," one of them said, "you've got, uh, a friend outside. Says she wants to say hi." I frowned. A friend? At this stage in life, unexpected visitors were rare. I walked to the door, opened it, and froze. There she was, the bridesmaid, the ghost of my past. For a second, I didn't even recognize her. Her face was gaunt, her teeth ruined by years of addiction, her body thin and frail. She looked decades older than me, though we were the same age. "Hi," she said softly, almost sheepishly. "It's been a long time." The world seemed to tilt. Memories of her letter, of the venom she'd poured into my life, flooded back. And yet, here she stood, fragile, broken. I nodded, stepping outside. "It has." We stood on the porch, the muffled sound of family laughter behind me. She asked about my life. I told her, not to boast, but simply to answer. Yes, I had a house. Yes, I'd earned a master's degree. Yes, I had a career I loved. My children were grown and thriving. My ex-wife and I were still friends, raising our family with pride. Her eyes flickered with something: regret? Envy? Pain? She spoke of her own life. A short marriage that ended quickly. No degree, no real career. Struggles with addiction that had left scars she couldn't hide. I wanted to feel pity, but what I felt instead was clarity. For years, her words had lived rent-free in my mind. For years, I'd fought to prove her wrong. And standing there, I realized I already had. Not by outshining her, not by being better, but by simply building a life of love, resilience, and perseverance. She had tried to curse me with failure, but the curse had never belonged to me. It had belonged to her. We didn't talk long. The December air was sharp, and her presence carried a heaviness that didn't belong in my home. Before she left, she said quietly, "You turned out better than I thought you would." I wanted to laugh. Better than she thought? I had surpassed every cruel word she had ever written. But instead of anger, I simply nodded. "Take care of yourself," I said. She walked away, disappearing into the night. And just like that, the chapter closed. I returned inside, where my family was waiting. My children's laughter wrapped around me. My ex-wife handed me a plate of food, and I felt warmth return to my chest. The letter, the curse, the poison, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was here, in this house, in this life I had built. And for the first time in 24 years, I finally let go.